guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be reacting to a video called How I See the US After Living in Europe for 2 years. Well, I think 2 years is enough time to make a really good comparison between two places. So let's check it out and comment, like, and subscribe.
Almost 2 years ago, I took one of the biggest risks of my entire life. I sold everything I owned, told my family and friends goodbye, and started a new chapter in Europe.
Love it.
Portugal, to be exact.
Damn it.
This is how I see the US after living in Europe for almost 2 years. And let's just say it changed me, but not in the way I thought it would. I'm going to be brutally honest and not going to hold back. Keep in mind, these are only my opinions, and you can take it or leave it, simple as that. Ever since the first time I had visited Europe back in 2011, I knew that I wanted to move here at some point, gain some new perspective, and introduce a new culture into my life. And what better place to do it than Europe? Instead of 50 states, there's 50 different countries that speak completely different languages and all have diverse food and cultural backgrounds. So I'm going to start with the biggest difference that I found between United States and Europe, and that is the work-life balance. Now, this is a big generalization because I know that there's countries in the European Union that work very hard and want everything to be perfect. Germany. But for the most part, it seems that one of the most important things to Europeans is their quality of life. There is this generalization that a lot of Europeans don't work as hard as Americans, and I don't think that's completely true. Many cafes and restaurants in Europe have the same owner from the start to finish. They never retire. They do the same thing with very exceptional quality until the day they die. Yeah. And this isn't something that happens too often in the United States.
No.
This is one of the reasons that I think in Europe, the food quality generally tends to be a bit better, even the fast food. The European fast food tends to still have fresh ingredients if they aren't the franchises from America like McDonald's. You can't compete with a restaurant whose owner has been cooking the same dishes for 50 plus years. And it's pretty obvious when I speak to friends and family back in the United States that they kind of have this rushed agenda where they're trying to get as much done as they can throughout the day. Yeah, and this was me included when I lived in the United States and I was working 12-hour days, sometimes 6 days a week. But I was missing out on some of the most important things like stopping and really listening to my friends and family.
Like living your life.
And I think that this is one of the most important things to most Europeans. I think this idea in the United States of having these big achievements and never being forgotten is something that's really important. However, in Europe, they have the right to be forgotten.
It's fine.
There's actually a law in Europe that is the right to be forgotten.
Now,
this is a foreign concept that I don't think Americans think about a lot. In Europe, if you've had an imperfect past, the European Union allows you to move past that. And this also means that in Europe, people have the right to have their personal data erased once the personal data is no longer necessary to the organization collecting it. While in the US, forcing removal of articles on the internet is impermissible under the First Amendment.
Yeah.
Now, after living in Europe for almost 2 years, I have come to the conclusion that the United States is currently in a state of toxic extremism.
Oh my God.
It's not very common in Europe to hear people arguing about politics, blaming unrelated issues on opposing political parties or specific politicians. It's just something you don't really hear that often.
Really?
Now, that doesn't mean that Europeans aren't political. However, you don't see it tearing apart families based on the president or prime minister that they voted for.
Get what it means.
When I go to family gatherings in Portugal, rarely does politics ever come up. And this is something very polarizing and disappointing in the United States. I can't go anywhere in the United States without somebody blaming something on Biden or Trump. Like, they're responsible for everything that's gone wrong in the past 10 years or something. Now, sure, I have my political beliefs as well, but I usually keep them to myself and don't ruin everybody around them's energy and vibe. And they are living in a direct result of the aftermath, which is why they are a little bit more hesitant and seasoned when it comes to political matters. If you come from a place in the United States like Detroit or Flint, Michigan, like I do, then safety is a night and day difference here in Europe. especially Portugal, which has been ranked one of the top 10 safest countries in the world. After living in Europe for 2 years, I've been able to let my guard down and not be as paranoid. Especially when I'm walking around alleyways at night or going to see a movie or going to a festival, I don't have to worry about the place being shot up. It's very sad, but this is a true reality in the United States.
No, it is.
And in the USA, wealthy
Depends on
people
where you live.
have moved to the suburbs in gated communities because they fear the inner city's rising crime rates. And I
Yeah.
can't help but to think back in times when I lived in Los Angeles where I was robbed at gunpoint, or when I lived in Reno, Nevada and our family house was broken into multiple times. And sometimes it makes me apprehensive to come back to visit the United States. And if
Really?
you've ever had a gun held to your chest, I'm sure you
Well-
can sympathize with what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
but
of course.
after being in Europe for a couple years, there are few places that have violent crimes like the United States. Europe is certainly not a perfect place, and you
No.
do have crimes happening here. However,
It's very
nowhere
safer.
near the scale of the violent and gun crimes happening in the United
Yeah.
States. A place where you can be attacked in the streets for your beliefs. And that concept to
It's
most
crazy.
Europeans is completely foreign. Now,
Yeah, it
I know
is.
that prejudice exists here in Europe. However, I have never heard an
They're not gonna
ethnic
kill
or
you for
racial
it.
slur ever yelled on the streets like I have in the United States. And that should say a lot. All right,
That's
now let's
insane.
talk about the food.
fact that he has heard
Unless
them.
you have the financial means to do so, you are likely paying 4 times for gourmet foods in the United States, where in Europe, these foods
Yeah.
are just the normal. In America,
Yeah.
fresh, healthy food is usually sold at a premium where only the richer
It
people
is.
can afford it. In my opinion, this is a crime against humanity. Here in Europe, they subsidize the
It's kind of, but no, it is. Yes, absolutely, it is.
agriculture so that it can still be sold at an affordable price. And more than half of the GMOs and chemicals available in United States foods are illegal in Europe. Typically in Europe, teenagers speak multiple different languages. They're well versed in fine arts and music.
They're
And they
cultured.
understand world geography. Generally just much more cultured than what I see typically in the United States.
Typically,
I mean,
that's
when I
the
first came to
keyword.
Europe when I was 21-year-olds, I had 17-year-olds playing me Mozart and Bach and painting incredible paintings and speaking 4 different languages to me. And I realized that, wow, I am not cultured at all. And I think a big part of this is attributed to the education. All over Europe, schooling is free. And some of the best universities
better?
aren't even free. Students here can focus on their passions, and if they don't like what they're gotten into, they can switch it without being in this massive mountain of debt like in the United States.
Oh, yeah.
Students in Europe can focus on their passions.
You can just
and if
do
they
what you
made
like.
the wrong decision and don't like the career path they're
can
taking,
switch.
they're not in mountains of debt like they are in the United States. They
Yeah.
don't have this strong pressure to continue to pursue something they don't
Yeah, because if you have not millions, but thousands of dollars in loans, then I have to stick with it. I can't switch around. I can't pay any more debt.
do. And I think this is really important. Some countries in
It
Europe
is.
even allow you to go into a specific trade of choice to be able to follow your passion and not have to learn all of this useless knowledge that has nothing to do with your career path. I know
I love
many
that.
people, including myself, that are afraid to go to the doctor in the United States because of how much it's going to cost.
Yes,
and
it's crazy.
a complete opposite contrast here in Europe, where many of my friends go to the doctor regularly just to get a checkup because they can. And it seems
free?
to be
I
encouraged by the
assume?
doctors. In Europe, things like blood tests and exams are a fraction of the cost that they are in the United States. For
Oh, a
instance, I
fraction.
went to
You
the
still need to
hospital
pay.
and needed to have an x-ray done on my finger. And I went, no. How much is that gonna cost? And they said, €1. And I went, can you put my whole body
what?
into the x-ray machine then? Just kidding. I don't need any unnecessary radiation exposure. But I
Yeah.
don't think that people should be in fear of going to the doctor. And
Yeah,
this is the
you would
reality for a
believe-
lot of people in the United States.
Sadly, it
Currently,
is.
I pay a premium healthcare insurance in Portugal for about €85 a month. And that
It's so
includes
cheap.
just about everything. Whereas
cheap.
a not so good insurance in the United States that I was
$500.
paying $500 for a month
Yeah.
was never accepted
Easily.
anywhere and was a complete hassle to have. So
Yeah.
the polarization is pretty crazy in terms of the healthcare here. Now, I will say that the public hospitals tend to get overrun here in Portugal sometimes. But
okay.
because I have private healthcare insurance, I can use any of the private state-of-the-art hospitals located anywhere in Portugal. And I've been there a couple times and they're super nice and I've been really impressed by the facilities. Now, alcoholism certainly exists in Europe, that's for sure. But the drinking culture in the United States is completely different than most of Europe, maybe more similar to Ireland or United Kingdom. A lot of European countries have a long history with wine and beer, and they've developed an art form on when and where and how much to drink. In comparison to the American binge culture, shots,
Oh, yeah,
this
for
doesn't
partying.
really exist in Europe for the most part. In fact, it's very rare to see people taking shots, and if they are, they're these little baby shots that are half of what they are in the United States. I feel like in the United States, it's encouraged to get wasted and get super drunk, and people brag about these experiences. But in Europe, you don't want to be that guy. Don't be that guy stumbling through the streets. They will think you are a complete idiot. Do yourself a favor and don't be that guy. But how I see the United States now is not all negative, and there are some things that I took for granted while growing up there. One of those things is the American dream. Now, a lot of people said that is dead, but I believe the spirit is still very alive and well. The concept of entrepreneurship is not as popular here in Europe as it is in the United States.
Self-made
The United States is a place where people have a dream and they can move that future forward. And I have to credit that optimism for the entrepreneur spirit that I have today. And I never realized how truly American this concept was.
Until you went to Europe.
I would not be where I'm at today without this hustler go-getter mentality. And I have to give massive credit to the United States for that. I think a lot of times in Europe, it is this foreign concept to have this grandiose dream where you can live in financial freedom and retire early. But I believe Americans have this spirit of working very, very, very hard to be able to retire and enjoy, a certain amount of your life. However, one of the biggest problems is that people don't end up retiring until 65 in the United States, and most of your life's over. So younger Americans now want to retire at...
I'm calling a 65-year-old so old your life's about to be over? Not really, but I get his point.
40 and 35 if they can. And more power to them if they can figure out how to do so. But after painting these generalizations with such a wide brush, it's important to mention that there are countercultures and micro-communities all over the United States that also criticize many of the things that I mentioned in this video. There's an America that I love and miss so much. But of course, there are truths to the stereotypes or else they wouldn't exist. But at the end of the day, honestly, I'm just trying to have an open, fun conversation. And that's one of the beautiful things about living in the free world. Let me know in the comments below what you think about this. Am I just trying to put everybody into a box, or is there so much more nuance to all of this? Either way, I will be continuing to make videos all about Portugal. If this is something of interest to you, make sure to hit the like and subscribe button. This is some guy named Dave in Portugal, and we'll see you next time.
He had some really interesting points. I think one of the things that it just makes me laugh. There are it may sound like you're just being very overly harsh on the U.S., but no. Ultimately, I think of course you're going to be the product of the place basically where you grew up in, so that's not necessarily a bad thing. And of course, I think situations, as in so many things in life and countries and situations and just a lot of things, there are two sides of one thing. They're just two sides of the coin. It's not just black and white. There's so many there's a scale of grays in between. So you can't just outright say, the US sucks bad and Europe good better. No, of course not. They're always going to have it's always going to have its advantages, and the other is going to have the advantages and disadvantages are going to be present in both sides. So I don't think, of course, it's not, and he made a really good point of, no, I credit a lot of the things that, he mentioned. I wouldn't be where I am if it hadn't been for a lot of I think he credits, the U.S. sort of dream, the American dream culture for making him live his life, and even making the move to Europe, which I think is great. But I think it's really funny just when you put it that way. I'm wondering if it's because I think in Europe maybe they have I don't know, again, if maybe it's I'm painting Europe with just one wide brushstroke, but I think maybe they suffer from the tall poppy syndrome, so I don't think it's that expected or probably well looked if you're sort of, yeah, I'm going to, I'm gonna, I don't know, create my own company, and I'm going to, work my own, and then I'm going to retire by the time I'm 40. Maybe they don't really see that as a good thing because, again, they're more about, no, you have to follow the rules, and again, you don't really want to stand out. So maybe that's why it's the U.S. the American dream still sort of is thriving in the U.S. Maybe it's because in other places it's not really that well seen. But one of the good points that he made that made me think, oh yeah, because I think that a lot of the people, I think maybe younger people, is they want to work a lot when they're still sort of young. Although again, I think a 60-year-old it's still kind of young. But I think probably more about, I don't know, maybe they're up until their mid-30s and probably up until their 40s, let's say. They just want to work a lot during, I don't know, 20 years of their lives, by the time they're 20 to the time they're 40. So they're able to sort of save enough money, and then I can retire by the time I'm 40 or 45. So I can enjoy that, all my extra time, if I retire by the time I'm 45, I can just spend, the rest of my life just traveling or, whatever. Although, again, there's two things. A, there are no guarantees in life. The only thing, not necessarily because a person's old, they're going to be more likely to die, or because you're young, you're going to be less likely to die. I mean, technically it is, but there are no guarantees, and old people can maybe live until they're 100 and 105, and young people can die at 30 or 22. So, again, there's no guarantees, but I'm wondering, taking into account, let's assume everything goes right. I think, yeah, sure, that seems like a great plan. You're going to retire at 45 and you're just going to keep traveling or doing whatever you said you want with your life. But I think obviously that's a very American thing. And I wonder, it's because again, the working culture in the US is sort of the work-life balance is more, you have to grind, you have to work, you have to work, you have to work. But in Europe, I think it's because they probably, again, they have that work-life balance a little bit more figured out, and people are just a little bit freer to, I don't know, take vacations and, I don't know, just live their lives, spend time with their family and loved ones. Maybe they don't really feel the need to, I have to retire early so I can live my life, because they're already living their life. It's no, I don't really, why would I need this? Why would I need to retire early if I can just, I don't know, I can go on, continue with my life by just retired at a normal sort of older age, because I don't feel the need. I already feel like I'm living my life to the fullest. And I think that's probably the main difference between sort of the US kind of thinking and a more European mindset. It's because, yeah, of course, if you're constantly working all the time, like he said, you have 12 hours working days, and you're working 6 days a week. Of course, you're not feeling like you're living your life. You're feeling like I'm just working. That's the only thing I'm doing. So yeah, of course, you're going to feel like, no, I need to retire so I can just enjoy my life. For Europeans, I think that's completely unheard of. So there's no way, why would I need this? I'm already living it. So maybe, again, it's just a point, I think, if you're in your point of view, and whatever it is that you prefer, what you think is probably best for you, or I don't know, your particular lifestyle. But I wonder if that's really the main difference between sort of both places and both cultures. The other thing that I found really, I think it's really funny, the whole, people are drink a little bit less, is they're more sort of, I don't know if it goes with the culture thing. Maybe not. Maybe I'm just being stereotypical. They're very cultured. They know when and when not to drink. But I think the whole, alcoholism, and they're constantly encouraging you to drink. Well, I guess it just depends. You don't want to be the annoying drunk guy anywhere. Not in Europe, not in Portugal, not in the US, and no everywhere. But I'm wondering also, it's because I've never seen that sort of, it's encouraged for you to drink. I personally, I don't think I've ever experienced this. Maybe if you're at one particular time period in your life, probably if you're, I don't know, high school, peer pressure, and probably, I don't know, college, and it's not that they're pressuring you to drink. It's just, again, the lifestyle, I think, is really, I know, it lends itself to that. The whole sort of, let's do shots and let's do this. I think maybe as people, I think, get a little bit older, they learn about control. So it's less a concern of, let's go and get drunk tonight. And that's a little bit less. I think usually some people learn, I think, to be more I don't know, just measure their drinks better. It's okay. I can have a drink whenever I want to. I don't need to get drunk because obviously getting drunk sucks. So, why would you want that? You know your limits. But I always say it takes some time for you to actually understand what your limits are. Then I would assume that's for both Europeans and Americans or just anywhere or everyone. And of course, I think the healthcare, I think is one of the big things. Of course, I think from one of the biggest shocks. I'm surprised by how cheap it is actually, because when he said when he was mentioning, I sort of whatever sort of what are you paying for insurance, for health insurance in the US? It's around 400 and 400 to 500, and it's not gonna be the top, the greatest insurance ever. I think it would make a European person just fall on their back. Is what do you mean? That's crazy. But I was surprised by how cheap it actually was. I think still 90. I think it was 90 euros a month. That's incredibly cheap. I don't know if all countries in Europe are like that. Obviously, his point is just Portugal. So I don't really know if all countries in Europe work the same way. But still, I know it's always going to be cheaper, but I'm surprised by how cheap Portugal healthcare actually is. And of course, the education, I think he makes also a really good point of, he felt kind of dumb in comparison compared to, I think, teens in Portugal, or well, maybe I don't think he mentioned he was Portugal. He just mentioned, I think, the Europe in general. So he was like, oh no, I felt so dumb just because, all those kids that were younger than me and were so much more cultured. I think that's just a matter of perspective. I don't think you should you shouldn't be that hard on yourself, I believe, just because, again, if you don't really know something, and again, maybe that's just me, but I think if you don't really know something, I think it's a good thing that you're sort of, you're accepting that you're ignorant. It's okay, I'm ignorant about this, but it's a learning opportunity. So I think instead of being so harsh on you, as in, oh no, I'm so dumb, I don't know anything, all these people are they're more knowledgeable than I am, or they speak so many more languages, they know so much about classical music or art history or whatever. Well, what a great opportunity to learn. I think that's the first step towards, I think, knowledge is sort of understanding that you don't really, and accepting your ignorance. So I don't think it's a learning opportunity. Hopefully he took it and was, maybe I should improve this, or I should just learn more things. But I think the education, obviously, I don't really know if in Europe it's better. Obviously, again, it would be crazy to compare both of them, just because I think obviously the US also has incredible colleges and schools, and Europe also has incredible colleges. It's called, because universities, I think they're called universities over there, and schools in general. So of course it would be crazy to compare them. But I think it's more about maybe the medium. I think what he was going with this is maybe, I think, the medium sort of free sort of public school in Europe, it's probably better than the average sort of public school in the US. Maybe that's what he meant. Although again, in the US has so many different sort of particularities that actually influence how better of a school it is compared to another. It depends on the school district. It just depends on so many things. And depends on the region. I don't know. It's just so many things. But maybe that's what he meant of, well, maybe in Europe it's just more, the average sort of school is, maybe the school system is a little bit better. And I do agree that I think the fact that you don't really have, you don't have this huge amount of loans, and you don't really have a lot of money, because it's free, or maybe it's really cheap. I think it really does allow you more freedom to experiment and be, I think I'm taking these classes, or I tried my hand at this degree, but I didn't really like it. I really figured out this really wasn't for me. So I don't have to stick with it. It's sort of, you're afraid of cutting your losses because I already invested so much, some costs. It's sort of, I don't know, it's just I invested so much money. It's fine, because in Europe, because everything's either cheap or free, it's okay. I can just sort of be, this isn't for me. I'm just going to do something else. And of course, while as in the US, if you already invested so much money, you're still paying the loans. It's, even if I don't like this, I kind of have to stick around with this degree because I'm not willing to get into more debt, because what am I doing? It's sort of financial suicide. So of course I understand it, but I think his perspective, I think, was incredibly interesting. And it doesn't mean one place is better than the other. It just means some places have advantages and disadvantages, and other places just as well. But I'll see you soon, and bye!